Welcome to the Simpleton Podcast. I am Clark Massey in Kansas City, Missouri, and I am with Laura Heeman from
Hyattsville, Maryland.
Woo!
Yeah.
The podcast team is back together. We're recording a special podcast today just for our producer, Ben, because we want to talk to him about simple living.
He's become very consumeristic.
Or rather, just complex.
Yes, thank you guys. Renting out half of the upstairs of an old house has just become far too luxurious for my wife and I. So, yes, thank you for your help.
So, simple living is like an ongoing idea at Simple House, and it is often a weird idea or a bad idea, and I got issues with it, and we're going to talk about that. We're going to talk about the theology of it. It's not what you read on the bumper stickers. We're going to talk about the death and rebirth of home economics, the future of home economics, like what it used to be and what it is now. And we're also going to talk about some really boring things that Laura insists that we talk about that are the most basic things in the world that you probably already know, but we're going to let Laura tell you them anyway, because
thank you. It's
don't
generous.
Don't get distracted by all the little innovation ideas we have. You got to focus on the basics. All right.
Is this going to be a part one of a two-part simple living?
And Laura, you know that it is. You asked a rhetorical question there.
Well, thanks for answering it for
all right.
people that didn't.
Our next podcast, we found out we had too much material on this. So in our next podcast, we're going to kind of cover like cell phones. We're going to talk about some tips for living simply, and actually maybe give you some gift ideas or just ideas for things that, you know, might be helpful to live a simpler life and a less consumeristic life. But this podcast is more the theory one. All right. The theology and Catholic idea of simple living, which I think could be better expressed as voluntary poverty. So there is this need right now for kind of an anti-consumeristic take, you know, and Simple House is supposed to be simple. And so we are seeing a little bit as part of that message of we need an anti-consumeristic take. And I don't mind that totally. But I have had people be missionaries at Simple House, 10 months, leave, write me a thank you note. And the thank you note will say, "Thank you, Clark, for helping me learn how to live simply." And I'm like, that was not my goal for you to come here and learn how to live simply. Laura, I'll try to express the goal of Simple House and you tell me your thoughts. So I feel like the goal of Simple House is how to think from first principles about theology and evangelization. It's it's to give you space in a simple environment, like a monastic environment, to take your faith life seriously. Kind of the same way people like train for a marathon or have to get up every day and do something they don't like. We want you to get up every day and try to figure out how to pray and how to start getting the kind of reward from that, even though the initial is always like a big cost. You know, it's both kind of a prayer life idea and evangelism idea. And then the third one would be just actually to get to know and build real friendships with the poor, you know, and real love.
Yeah.
So when someone leaves and they say, "You taught me how to live simply," I'm like, what?
Yeah. I feel like we want people to, we don't actually talk about like simplicity really a lot at a Simple House, but it's like when we talk about a Simple House being an experiment in Christianity, it's like we want people to do what many of the great saints have done before, you know, and experiment with giving up physical belongings or anything, you know, but just as an experiment to do the things that you said, that you just identified, you know, and it can give you like self-knowledge, and hopefully it's, you know, like helping you also tap into like the generosity and goodness of God.
Yeah. It's kind of the idea that we're deconstructing the religious life, like the same reason why everyone's joined religious orders and things like this in the past. We're trying to make that available to people just very simply, you know? And related to this kind of like mismessaging problem is last year, a piece of art showed up at the KC Simple House.
You want to call it art?
I don't know if I'll tell you about it. You tell me if it's art. You can, these houses are also people's homes. So like, I don't go in and try to tell them how to interior decorate. I just try to keep them, you know, within some broad thing. So I didn't take this piece of art down, but this piece of art looked like it'd come from someone digging through TJ Maxx's, like home decor department. and they'd taken a piece of whitewashed wood that in black said "Live Simply" and put it prominently in our living room. And this has bothered me ever since this went up. And now that those missionaries have turned over, I'm ripping it down. All right. So what is this like wrong idea of living simply? So there's been this bumper sticker I've seen, and I have no idea who said this. I've seen it attributed to St. Elizabeth Ann Seton. I've seen it attributed to Mother Teresa, and I'm pretty sure I've seen it someone else, but I can't tell you exactly who else I saw it attributed to. It says, "Live simply so others may simply live."
I'm sure Gandhi said it too. I'm
sure he did. All those people also like co-authored the Serenity Prayer. No one seems to know where that came from either. Sinead O'Connor also said it. But sorry not to make fun of it that badly, but like it has this like assumption behind it of scarcity that's kind of weird. And another similar idea is like, kids, eat your broccoli because there's kids starving in Africa, right? Yeah. Another similar statement is like, I've literally heard people say, I've heard this from two people, my own father, and then also my own father was a Protestant, and God bless him. And I think he probably came around on this, and I've also heard this while hanging out with the Houston Catholic Worker, that someone there said this to the leader of the Houston Catholic Worker, and they had to contradict him, he had to correct him. It was like, why are we building cathedrals when we could be using all that money for the poor? Mm-hmm. Right? We literally believe in the God of resources.
Yeah.
We literally believe in the person who took something out of nothing.
Yeah.
Whole cloth can just invent it, and create it, right? This idea of this scarcity is just both economically not true and theologically not true, right?
Yeah.
Like the reason why you need to live simply or observe voluntary poverty is not so others may simply live. That's not a real trade-off, right?
Yeah.
When you see, one, God can just afford both. And the other thing is, whenever you see like a great problem in the world of famine or scarcity, it's almost always like 99% of the time linked to a political and social problem. It's not actually linked to an overconsumption problem.
Right.
And that sounds so illogical to most people. Like it's so attractive somehow to get your mind always thinking about scarcity. It's kind of a Marxist idea. But like it's all these horrible scarcities are almost always linked to central planning, or some malevolent political dealings and things like this, right?
Yeah.
And therefore, whether or not your kids eat their broccoli has nothing to do with the starvation in Africa. There's just not a link.
Yeah. Meat eating is often accused of causing starvation in Africa,
Right.
Yeah.
The next take then is like, if this is not really, a scarcity problem, why live simply? If there is enough for everyone and God can just give you whatever he wants, why cut back at all, right? And I think this is for spiritual purity reasons. Like there's this Christian idea that this is how you fight selfishness. This is how you tame your desires, right? This is how we get in right relation to the material world. And ironically, this is actually how you enjoy the material world too.
Yeah.
You enjoy feasting after you fasted. If you feast all the time, you actually quit enjoying the material world.
Yeah. Yeah.
And there's this other reason for voluntary poverty that I think of as like, it's in the New Testament, and then there's like a big gap, and then it reappears with St. Francis of Assisi, of this idea that we are doing voluntary poverty for the sake of relying on divine providence. You're stripping everything away to the point that God's got to save you and God's got to provide for you at each moment,
Yeah.
And that's another reason to kind of live simply and put yourself in a sense at God's mercy. I think that idea deserves a lot of attention. And Simple House has had, and me personally, I've had different ideas about that over the years, but I don't think we can go super deep on that in just a simple living podcast. But so once you decide that simple living is, good for you, or you want to be in right relation to the material world, you actually have to come up with what your goals are, and I mean like a material world type goal. Like it's not enough to just say, I'm just going to keep consuming mindlessly. It's not enough to say, I'm just going to try to not consume at all. Like you actually have to say, what do I need? What does my family need? What should I be doing? And the goal could be something like, I need a dependable car.
Yeah.
Or I want to pay for Catholic school for my kids. Or I want to buy a home. Yeah. Or I want to like all these things I think are pretty reasonable.
Or I want to be more generous with the poor, or with the church or whatever.
Or I'm building a company, not just for wealth, but to create like life-giving jobs, or meaningful jobs for people. Right. Yeah. Or give more to the poor, build my community out. All those things I think are kind of good goals that are in right relationship with the world and God. Right. Particularly dependable car. Just kidding. But like we all have these ideas, right? Or we need to define these. Like it's not enough to just say I'm going to cut back or I'm going to try to amass more and more. But you actually have to, if you're going to be in right relationship with money in the material world, you actually have to know what the point is, right?
Yeah, so, and you kind of have to understand both of them.
Right, and once you have this goal in mind, you actually have a dollar figure.
Yeah.
Like, is this something where you're going to need $5,000 a year to pay for the Catholic school? Is this something where you're going to need $5,000 or $8,000 one time to buy that car? Is this a $100,000 problem, a $10,000 problem, a $1,000 problem? Is it an ongoing problem or is it a one-time problem?
Yeah.
And once you have that, now you have to come up with how you're going to live in order to achieve these goals. This all sounds very basic budgeting, but without this idea of budgeting, this whole living simply thing is very ethereal and like not grounded.
Yeah.
What'd you say?
Yeah, it's very ambiguous. And I feel like I see a lot of people do things like they feel like they should live simply, or they, they're trying to do the anti-consumer thing. So then they like go out and buy all the like anti-consumer simple products or whatever. And it's kind of like a weird, it's just a same exercise with maybe greener cups or whatever.
Right.
And there's not a calculation of, why is this good or why is this helping me or why,
Yeah, there needs to be a calculation here. It should not just be like in the moral realm.
Yeah.
Otherwise you don't really know when you've done enough and you'll never be satisfied. Because there's two ways to like become obsessed with the material world. One is by saving and by cutting back all the time. You're actually obsessing over the material world. Yeah. And another one is by just accumulating without a goal.
Yeah.
You're also obsessing about the material world without any logical reason. Right. Yeah. So we want to avoid both of these. You can be a great miser and a great sacrificer and be totally obsessed with the material world and not be achieving the freedom you're supposed to be achieving.
Yeah. Right? And I think that's like a struggle that people at a Simple House have had, it's like, okay, you're on this like new tighter budget.
Then you just think about your budget all the time and you're not free.
And like worry about it, and right. I mean, some planning is required.
Right.
But right.
And it also, what this also does for you is, we're going to talk about home economics and things, is the two great ways to achieve your financial goals are to either save money or to make more money, like to either squeeze the lemon or grow the pie. Right. And once you know your financial goal, be it 1,000, 10,000, 100,000, and be it like over years or a single one-time thing, you now know, like if this idea you have is like, okay, well, to achieve this goal, we'll eat lentils for some months, it's like, well, is that a $10 solution to a $10,000 problem?
Right.
Like you actually know if what you're doing is illogical or logical.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
So basically there is a big spiritual dynamic to this, but there's also like a real world issue here, particularly for families, know your goals so that you know your strategies.
Yeah. But I think you might be like separating it a little bit too much to say the practical is not related, or is.
You're saying that the spiritual and the practical are very related here.
Yeah, in the physical world, yeah.
I think that is true. Like somehow, like you're not going to have freedom in Christ. You're not going to feel like you've done what you should if you're not providing for your family, or if you're not like doing what you need to do to get your family in the place it needs to be, right?
Yeah.
But also if you're always just trying to like add wealth to your family and not actually saying how much is enough, nothing will ever be enough.
Right.
Right. I had my spiritual director once told me, he goes, people who believe there's not enough money, there will never be enough money.
Right. Right.
Yeah. But if you believe there is enough money, there is enough money.
Yeah.
And that's true. There's also something true though, that like, if you don't have good shelter or don't have dependable transportation, you're always going to be having stress in your life that you need to figure out, or you're going to have a very rough spiritual life.
Yeah. So, and I think it's like these, maybe I've seen families with kind of smaller pies live in a way that is like very edifying, and there's like happiness and thriving in the family. And I think it's like you have to ask yourself if the way you're living is like making you stingy or less generous or unhappy, yeah.
Right. We're going to have another podcast at some point about wealth and whether or not it's inherently evil or not, which I don't believe it is. But you see people who are in right relation to the material world who have more, and you see people who are right relation who have less, and you see people in wrong relation who have more and wrong relation who have less. Yeah. Merely the amount of wealth you have does not fully determine your relationship with the material world. All right. Yeah. So now let's talk about living simply, which is usually on the home front, which has to do with home economics. Mm-hmm. All right. Once upon a time, they used to teach this in school.
Yes.
I think older people remember this.
Way back.
Right.
When I was in 7th grade and you were in 7th grade.
Great. Were you in public school or Catholic school in 7th grade?
Yeah, and we had tech ed and we had home ec.
Right. Yeah. Okay. There's something that changed. And if you just look at it like resources in education, there's some mindset that changed in the, say, late 80s, early 90s. And I don't think this is like, education philosophy changed, blah, blah, blah. It's like our whole country's philosophy changed about consumption and economics. Mm-hmm. And part of that shift was this idea that everyone needs to go to college, that we're going to a service economy, that we're not going to produce, And during that time, I'm thinking the late 80s, early 90s, you saw shop classes diminish. You saw resources not be put into that. These were dusty areas, not really used areas, and home economics kind of went through the same fate. And something I've always wanted to do, I lived in DC with Simplehouse for most of a decade, and I always wanted to go to this one Smithsonian called the Smithsonian of Arts and Industry. And it's in a really cool building. It looked really awesome. But I never got to go because it was never open. And so I'm going to go to DC with my kids this Thanksgiving and do Simplehouse Thanksgiving in DC. And guess what? I went to go see if I could take them to the Smithsonian of Arts and Industry. It's still not open. It's been closed for 20 years.
But it's still standing? It's still
standing. It's the second oldest building in the Smithsonian system. And it's been closed for 20 years under the excuse of renovations.
Yeah.
I think it more shows priorities.
Yeah.
And it's so funny because I think when historians look back on the 20th century and America, they're going to see unbelievable amounts of innovation and productivity that kind of dwarf the rest of the world. You'd almost combine the inventions and innovation in America versus the rest of the world, and it's going to be amazing what America produced.
Yeah.
And that's going to be in that Smithsonian of Arts and Industry.
Which is closed.
We've closed, which is scary, all right.
Yeah.
Part of this also has to do with as we quit educating our kids and ourselves in these things, we kind of are not in the same relationship with the world around us as we once were. Yeah. And so pre-industrial revolution societies in Europe and everywhere, you kind of knew where everything came from, right? You kind of knew where the leather came from. You knew even if you hadn't tanned leather, you knew the process basically, right? And literally there were craftsmen. And I think a definition of a craftsman is someone who could almost make it from soup to nuts and use it. So it'd be someone could raise the cow, tan the leather, make the shoe, wear the shoe. Yeah. Right. Most things in everyone's life, pre-industrial revolution, they had an understanding inherently of everything they used like that, right? They saw the whole process and understood it fairly well, right? Mm-hmm. After the Industrial Revolution, and particularly after, say, World War II type era, we got into an area where the designer couldn't necessarily make the product. The maker couldn't design it or use it. And the end user couldn't have designed it or made it. Right. Yeah. I think a race car, right? Yeah. The race car driver might not know how to design or make this thing, but he can drive it. Then there's the makers and sometimes mini makers who couldn't have made all the other parts also. Yeah. And you end up with this situation where where we are today in modern society, where we don't know how our cell phones work or our laptops or these devices we're using all the time, every day.
Yeah.
And we're not even attempting to give our kids basic principles of like internal combustion engines.
Yeah.
Electronics,
Yeah.
And it kind of creates an alienation in the world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And part of the desire for this home economics is not just this like making money or something like this, or like saving money or achieving your goals. Part of the desire for home economics right now is just to get back in touch with the world. Do you think classical schools should have shop class?
I'm not sure that they don't have kind of, I don't know.
This is part of that movement that Steubenville now has a new project doing this.
Yeah.
And there's also something out in Wyoming Catholic College that sounds like they're doing this.
Yeah.
But I don't know if it's a separate track or not. I kind of think everyone needs a basic knowledge.
I think like in the ancient world, they did used to talk about like kind of different types of knowledge, like physical knowledge, and understanding sort of how to move in the world as a type of knowledge, that we don't really think about anymore.
Well, my memory is like Pope Benedict. I was reading something by him, and he was saying something to the effect that there's a type of knowledge you call technic, or the root word is like techne. You're right. It's like a how-to knowledge. Then there's philosophy, which is not necessarily a how-to knowledge. Mm-hmm. And I think this techne is important for us to not live in an alienated world.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And there's a great desire for this right now to either quote live simply or be self-sufficient.
Yeah.
Or to be independent and be able to do things for yourself.
Yeah.
And I'm not sure that all those motivations are the right motivations, but you're seeing like people try to, get back to gardening, get back to bread making, knitting wool, things like this. Right.
Yeah.
And what's interesting to me about this is it home economics or not? Mm-hmm. What's the value we're getting from it? Is the value economic or is the value something else?
Yeah.
And it seems like you have to sort these activities into hobbies and home economics.
Oh, yeah. No, like, I think we used to think of like if you made your own dresses, like that would be, would be like economic. Now it is not economic, both in purchasing the materials often and in time. And I think people don't properly value their time.
Right. Like in an old home economics course, they would have taught you things that are no longer economic.
Yeah.
Right. And what shifted is specialization and economies of scale. Right.
Yeah.
Like so like in dressmaking, like maybe at one point in history that was home economics and it no longer is.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. But I even have like just thinking about the value of your time, like a friend that's like resists doing the dishes during the day because your 10-year-old can do them, when he's home from school.
Right.
And she is more valuable in the house than as a dish doer. I still do the dishes, but anyway, but it's kind of a different, we don't often like correctly value our time, right? Is the point.
Right.
Yeah.
So to sort this, you can kind of sort things into hobbies and home economics because it's pretty bad when you start thinking that you're economizing when actually what you're doing is a hobby. So the way you sort these things is literally by doing the math. Like, is this actually making money or saving money? And in order to do that math, you have to have a value for your time. Now, valuing time is kind of weird, particularly if you're a stay-at-home mom. Your time is still valuable. Right.
Yeah.
If you don't have a value for your time, start with $15.
Yeah.
It's at least worth $15 an hour.
Yeah.
There's also the issue that some people have jobs where maybe they're making a salary, and if they work an extra hour at work, they don't get paid extra for that. Right. Or, and therefore maybe
if you work at a church.
Right. So maybe your work salary is like $30 an hour or $50 an hour or whatever. But if you work, what you use for home economics, maybe you're only going to make $25 an hour.
Yeah.
So kind of like an example of something that I think is probably not home economics is spinning wool. I started looking at that and it was like, oh my gosh, this has to be an act of love and therapy, not an act of home economics. This needs to be mechanized.
Yeah.
Raising chickens is also kind of funny. Like you'd have to have a great regenerating population of chickens for quite a long time to pay back the initial investment and to pay off that feed.
Yeah.
And I have a buddy who does this. He does meat rabbits, chickens, quails, bees. He does all this stuff. He's like the ultimate self-sufficiency guy.
Yeah.
And he actually says quail are the best deal for.
I know. I gotta look into that.
Yeah, meat versus feed. But like he's had like problems with raccoons killing his quail, and it's like, well, start
just
the
fed
math
that
over.
thing for 7 months, and now
you were starting to pay yourself off, and now you got to start over because this disaster happened.
Yeah.
So things that I think clearly are home economics that we need to encourage people to think about, like as opposed to like, hey, let me raise some chickens. It needs to be like, are you repairing things in your home? Right? Like, can you repair drywall? Can you change out a faucet? Can you unplug a faucet by taking apart the plumbing underneath the faucet? Right. Yeah.
That saves a lot of money, like hundreds of dollars. Yeah.
When your dryer conks out, do you like actually just go on YouTube and figure out how to fix it? You know what I mean? Like if you actually do the math on those, you're easily going to be making $50 an hour.
Yeah.
And you're going to be developing skills that other people are going to find useful.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I also think there's ways to develop side hustles here. If you're able to like refurbish things like appliances or maybe kids' bikes or something like this. Right.
Yeah.
But you have to do the math to figure that out.
You have to do the math. Yeah. And a lot of like Etsy shops or whatever don't pan out, Yeah. Can we talk about the value of hobbies? Did you have another thing?
No, go for it. So we just said the value money-wise of home economics, but what's the value of the hobbies that don't actually make sense from a cash value?
So I think it's like the hobbies you need to think of like, what's your other reason for having the hobby that's not like the home economics, and it's like you might want to make and grow your own food for health reasons or just because you enjoy it, you find it interesting. And I think a big value in kind of having interesting different hobbies is just being able to understand the world better. So if you kind of have some chickens in a garden, you understand more what food should look like, where it comes from, etc. Like I had been making bread for a while and reading the parable, like the kingdom of God is like leaven that the woman hides in the flour, and understanding that more deeply,
Right. You're becoming more rooted in the world around you, which is part of the point of, a good education, I think, too, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. And also sometimes these skills are transferable. Like I learned by working on air guns and like meeting this community of men who are really into that. I learned some basic mechanical skills that now if I do have to repair an appliance, I have those skills.
Yeah.
Which was just necessary,
Yeah.
So recap real quick, and we'll get to our final point, is that there's a desire right now to live more simply. It's because we're kind of alienated from our own world, but there also is a desire to live simply to kind of like decrease consumerism, to live a life that maybe even makes more sense economically. So you're not getting duped. You're not always buying these appliances that only last 7 years and having to replace them.
Or less.
Yeah, you're not getting like kind of the wool pulled over your eyes by the corporations right now. Is like kind of developing your skills and your home economics that way, right? Yeah. All right. The next podcast, just to remind you, will be very interesting, even though the next part of this podcast will be very boring. This is now things Laura thinks everyone should know that they already know, but have to be said out loud. What do you got, Laura?
All right. Well, I have to say that maybe it's like I had been hearing this a little bit, but it was like a revelation when when I heard it. And that is that most of us have too much stuff, and a lot of us don't have good systems in place in our homes. So several years ago, I watched this video about like how to make your laundry easier, and this was like life-changing. Sounds dramatic about a laundry video, but it was. And the whole main point of the video was like you have too much inventory in your house and it's too much to manage. And I know minimalism might be kind of getting tired now in our society, but I think a lot of us do have too much stuff in our house, and we spend a lot of time worrying about how to manage it, trying to find new solutions for managing it, buying new solutions to managing it. And it's just a lot easier to get rid of a lot of it. And I think you can also do some of the sort of experimenting in detachment, I think at the time that we watched this laundry video, I felt like I was drowning in just the laundry that was everywhere in the house with like young kids, and no one could help me do it, except for Ryan on the weekend. And at that time, I would have thought that maybe I was like sort of living a simple life just because we were on a tiny budget of being like simple house missionaries, but
like, what are you getting rid of? Like, your kids have too many outfits? Or
yeah,
what?
like literally for a while, we were just like, the kids are going to have 5 outfits while we get laundry under control. And it was like major change and help in our life. Because it was like we would just have all this clothes pile up, and then it was laundry mountain on the couch. We lived in a small house, like we couldn't hide the laundry anywhere, right? So it was just like laundry everywhere and slowly spreading, and the kids were all like toddlers or babies, so they were growing out of stuff every 2 seconds. So then it was like trying to manage, the laundry they were wearing, the hand-me-downs we were going to keep, and it was just like there were clothes everywhere. Has your family experienced this?
I don't think we've solved this problem yet. That's why I'm listening.
Okay. Okay. Yeah. So her advice was like, pare down to 5 outfits and don't fold your clothes. And
I love that advice.
Yeah, it was just like, get it in the drawers as fast as you can, because if not, it spreads out and it gets mixed in with the, scrambled eggs that your kids spilled on the floor or whatever,
Well, what about storing outfits? Like, say you got a kid and you got who's a boy, and he's like, and there's another boy 2 years younger.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Are you keeping a box of like?
Yeah. So now we keep like favorites. But it's like clothes are really cheap. And also it's very easy to get hand-me-downs. Like, I don't need to keep them because I can just give them to somebody in the community. And then when I need hand-me-downs that size, I can like send out on a Facebook group, on a listserv, like, hey, anybody have, short size 3T? And I can have like, 12 pairs of shorts the next day if I want them, So
right.
it was like a bad time management thing to be like keeping all the clothes we were keeping. Like, we were keeping every single thing, and it was taking me a long time to put it away because I was like, well, I need to mark it by size, and I'm like just a very disorganized person, and
right.
So I don't think it's worth keeping. We just keep stuff now that we really like, and maybe some basic items that are still in good shape, but
right.
Yeah.
A corollary problem I've had is like, you see this shop I'm in right now?
Yeah.
I once made a mistake of going into an Ace Hardware that was going out of business.
Uh-huh.
And I kept thinking like, I will use that. Like, in the next couple of years, I'll have a plumbing project that needs that. I will need that. I will need these fasteners. I will need this. I will need this. I will need this. Right. And they're all at like, say 25, 30% off retail.
Yeah.
Right. And I bought some stuff, and I've also bought stuff at other places thinking that I'll have a future use, And I got in a really bad situation where like the inventory management was stupid. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I started thinking, you know what? I think that what I want is a separate shop full of inventory where someone else has to sort it and put it all together. That's always there when I need it.
It's called the store.
Yeah, it's called Home Depot. I know. And it was just like, and now like if I like buy, say, too many parts for a project, say like too many plumbing parts, right? Mm-hmm. I bring every last one of them back that I don't use because that's where I store them. I do not store them in my shop anymore. Yeah.
This girl that I was the YouTuber, she's Minimal Mom, but that's like a big point of hers because they do a lot of like home reno type stuff. And it's like, it's called a store. They manage inventory. You don't need to do it. And she's got a lot of, if you can replace it for $20 or less, why are you keeping, this like thing for just in case 7 years down the line when it is, easily and cheaply replaceable. But anyway,
But you know what somebody will say, including maybe people I know well, they'll say, but it's $20.
Yeah.
Or $19. It's less than $20, but it's $19.
And then that's when you need to do the math with your time, right? Because the every time you pick that thing up and say, oh, where should I put this? Know, or every time you like open your closet and it's overwhelming, like how much like mental space is that taking up, or actual time,
You're motivating me right now to go through a lot of things. All right. What is the other really boring piece of advice you need to give?
The other thing is, this was a different mom blogger, was like, well, if you don't have your systems, in order of like getting dinner on the table and getting your laundry done, forget about every other project in your house. And I think the point, I think maybe you could even expand that list, but it's like, what are the basic minimal things I need to do to like take care of my family? I think clean bathroom, clean kitchen would be my third thing. It'd be like feed them, clothe them, and wash them. some basic cleaning, and then we're done. You know what I mean, right? But like, are you gonna like start a major bread baking initiative? Right. Is like your family should be eating at 6 and you're eating at 7 every night because you didn't know what you were going to make, or are you ordering out too much or whatever? So like, it's like, then you don't have your dinner system down, and you need to,
So basically you list your most basic priorities and needs, nail them down, get them efficient. And only then do you go on to volunteer at the school fundraiser. I have been torn about that, because it's like doing these social things is really important, and you're never going to...
that is really important, but I feel like in the house even, it's like I feel like this is like a major temptation that every mom in America has. Like, I need new storage bins for this new project. I don't know. Like, and it's like, just like, sometimes storage bins do make a big difference, but I'm not saying you have to only focus on those two things or whatever, but are you doing the most basic kind of functions to be like a provider and caretaker of your family, And I just, for us, getting like a laundry system that worked in place was major, like life-changing, and increased family peace, increased the ability to have people over at the drop of a hat, increased our ability to be generous, and just being able to have like well-managed inventory in the house, like saved us a lot of money of stuff that we didn't lose or needed to rebuy because we didn't know where it was or whatever. It made it easier to like get up and pray in the morning and just easier to be generous. So I think it's like, if those systems are in place, it makes everything else like a lot easier.
Great.
Yeah.
The end goal of simple living is actually to be in right relationship with the material world and to have the spiritual benefits that come from that. Right. Yeah. To not be obsessed with the spiritual world, either out of greed or even out of trying to save, Our next podcast, we're hoping to do something on some real basic things that are helpful. They're things that Laura and I have either discovered or used, but I feel like probably our listeners have a ton of ideas related to this. And if you want to send them in, asimplehouse@gmail.com. I would love it if we got like 5 or 6 great suggestions, and we even put them out there in a podcast too. So please send those in. Please like, subscribe, and if you think this is a worthy episode, please share it. Thank you.
All right. See you, Clark.
Talk to you later.